About another very talented but struggling quarterback that you know very well. You played 2 years in Chicago with Jay Cutler.
Mm-hmm.
He continues to struggle. His team obviously is struggling around him for many of these same kind of reasons we're talking about. But he's got weapons that Cam does not have. Why, now that you have some distance from Jay, why does he continue, in your opinion, to throw so many untimely interceptions?
Here's what I'll say about Jay. Jay's approach to the game, and maybe sometimes his demeanor, people from the outside that have no intimate knowledge of how he operates, how he prepares, what kind of teammate and person that he is, it's viewed entirely from the outside looking in. I think sometimes have a misconception of the way he carries himself and how much this really means to him. And now taking a step back, maybe that's easy to see, but the one thing I will say about Jay, preparation during the week, game day, football IQ, obviously physical talents off the charts. He is a guy that you would take on your team. He is going to give it his all. He's tough. He's a competitor. Now, sometimes his competitiveness and his fiery nature is something that scares us. If he was a safety or a linebacker, we would applaud it. But he's not. He's a quarterback. He's supposed to do things a different way. He's not supposed to maybe get in your face. His approach is more of a defense linebacker type approach, and I think sometimes that puts people off, but it shouldn't, because the intentions are good, the intentions are positive. Because at the end of the day, he wants to win, he wants to challenge those around him to win, and he wants to play ahead. And as a teammate, that's what we care about. That's the stuff. We don't get caught up in the perceptions and what's said. At the end of the day, he wants to win, he plays hard, and he's competitive, and he's talented as heck.
But surely it would drive you a little nuts when he just suddenly threw one, tried to throw it between three defenders and it got picked off.
I think what makes Jay special and what makes his talent special is sometimes you have to take the good with the bad. I think it's similar to Brett Favre. He is going to make those throws so many times that the times it doesn't shouldn't overshadow the times that he does make it so many.
Craig.
Some of the throws that he makes, some of the back shoulder, feet, people say, oh, his feet are off balance. Yeah, but he just threw a 35-yard comeback to the outside on a rope on 3rd and 12. So you have to sometimes take the bad because that's what makes him who he is.
Really? You're going to say that, Greg?
Yeah.
Greg, listen, I'm all for the Cam Newton soliloquy because you were absolutely on the money, because as far as I'm concerned, the Panthers organization should be responsible for stripping y'all of some of the potency you had on the offensive side of the ball. Jay Cutler is a perennial, perpetual underachiever. That's the bottom line, Greg. We can slice it any way we want to. The man's got one playoff victory in his career. All that arm strength, all that talent, everything that he's supposed to be able to do it. He continuously comes up short. Is that even deniable, Greg?
No, but I think so many times the praise gets heaped on the quarterback and the criticism gets heaped on the quarterback. And what we have to realize, this is not NBA basketball. We are not going to give the ball to LeBron every time down and have him put his head down and drive to the hole and single-handedly takes over. There are a lot of circumstances that go into overall team success and long-term, prolonged success in the NFL. And having a good quarterback is part of it, but there's so many other pieces that are required around that go into having success in the NFL that I think it's the sport that you cannot pin wins and losses on one individual.
That's fair. But my response to that would be, if you've been in the league for 9 years and you've had a plethora of scenarios that you were living in and dwelling in occupationally, and you continuously come up short, when does it become about you? You got Martellus Bennett. You got Brandon Marshall. You got Alshon Jeffries. You've got Matt Forte. Your offensive line is better than it was in years past. Before it wasn't, but it is now. Before you didn't have Brandon Marshall. Then you did it. Then you had him before, but then you did it, and then now you got him back in Chicago. You didn't always have Alshon Jeffrey to this level, the way that he's capable of producing. You have Tressman now. You had Lovie Smith before. How many different scenarios have to show itself, Greg, before we're able to look at the most important position on the field, the person that's playing it, and saying, excuse me, it's about you finally. It's got to be about you at some point.
I don't think it needs to be ignored. I don't think anyone, I'm sure if you ask Jay, he wouldn't say you ignore me, I'm not part of the problem. I don't think that's the case at all. Everyone plays their part in the problem. But to say he is the problem single-handedly, that circumstance, I think is an unfair criticism across the board, not just for Jay, but I think that criticism of wins, losses, how many championships, this guy's won this many, that many. I think in football, I think that's not the argument to be had. It's different than the NBA where championships and rings and all that mean so much. There is no more ultimate team competition than in football, especially offensive football.
I get
so
that.
I think that criticism's a little unfair.
I didn't say one thing about basketball. I never brought up the NBA. I'm talking about Jake Cutler. I'm talking about Jake Cutler being in various different scenarios and still doing what he does.
Stephen A., my conclusion is, I think Greg Olson should run for office.
Yeah.
He's a gifted orator. Yep.
Greg, you fairly point out that Cam receives more criticism than other quarterbacks, so that was fair of you. You also say the team needs to play better, including yourself. Quickly before we wrap this segment, 3-6-1, NFC South, is that the division you guys win it?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear. I mean, and for us to sit up here, it sounds crazy to say, oh, all we have to do is win 5 games and we win the division. That's the case. That is the case. But we sound silly. We haven't won a game in 5 weeks, so we need to start with winning 1 game. We need to win this 1 game following the bye, and then we'll worry about winning 2, and then we'll worry about winning 3, 4, and 5. But the reality of the situation is it does not make our season any better than it is. We are 3-7-1, but at the same point, the circumstances we're in, if we do win and we handle our business, we can win a bad division.
7.
And that's somewhat encouraging.
Yeah, I gave you one more. 3-7. Yeah, it's even worse.
I should have said 3-6.
3-7. All right, Governor Olson, thank you. Just like he defended Cam Newton.